Hello and welcome to Chapter 8. I want to thank you for your continued support of listening to my stories and sharing them to your friends and families. If you are a new listener, welcome. I'm happy to have you here with me. This is the final chapter of Lonely Is Never You, and I tell you I had quite a joy writing it. If you'd like to hear a certain storyline come to life, feel free to message me, and I can definitely cook it up and dedicate it to you. Thank you again and enjoy.
The wind is playing with your hair. I'm watching it painting circles in the air. You're smiling at me like only you could do, like a perfect dream, and that dream is you. The sun is lighting up your face. We stayed up all night and listened to the rain, like music kept on playing like a drum. With you in my arms, I'm the lucky one, and I wanna spend the day making love 1,000 ways and more to show. Baby, every time we're kissing, I know it is forbidden, but I can't stop. No, I can't stop. Your body's on my body, I know you.
Gunner. The look on Reese's face told me everything I needed to know. The dots connected, and I began to understand why it was so easy for the father at her home to give her away to pay off his gambling debts. But one thing still didn't add up, and it was how Reese and her reunited after all this time. I watched his face with the emotions he tried to hide, and I could only laugh. "Old man, you fooled me," I whispered. "Tell me, how did you do it? How did you still keep track of her all this time?" "You think I'd lose her to a man like that? It wasn't my fault I was born poor and he was born with a title. Her parents didn't even blink when I went to kneel for her hand in marriage, but I already knew she was pregnant with my child. I knew that man was a gambler, so I made sure once I got into the king's service to make him owe as much money as possible to the one bank owned by the king himself. It was the only way how I could get my daughter back." I smiled. "You're quite clever, Reese." And then I turned to Dalton. "You know about this?" Shaking his head, he replied, "First time hearing it too, brother, although I'd say it was a smart move." Reese smiled. "Thank you, my lords. It was my only option left after the woman I loved was given away." "So tell me, why would you bring her here on this very ship?" Reese's eyes glittered. "I have a plan, and she knows it. But right now, I need you to act your part so that X believes everything. He wants her, my lord. That much I can tell you. When I told you that she came from a long line of warriors, I wasn't lying. I have painted her lips and body with a sedative. As soon as X starts to touch her, he will lose conscience, and he can be handed over to the royal army." My hands tightened on the railing. "Are you mad? I don't want X touching her." "It's the only option, and you, my lord, must control your emotions, or else we will be dead, and any chance at happiness with my daughter will go out the door." When she left the palace hall, she told the king and queen to keep the wedding plans. So that means she's going to do whatever it takes to bring you both to the altar. I shut my eyes, and I couldn't stop to think about what was going to happen if it should all go wrong. "How strong is your sedative?" "Enough to wipe out an entire army. It won't hurt her, but it will weaken him." I let out a hot and heavy breath. "I can't let her face X alone. She came because of me. And you came because of her. You're both even," Dalton said. "For crying out loud, Gunner, let her do the work and just wait. For once in your life, can you listen to me and stop wanting to be the hero every goddamn time?" I shot my brother an irritated look. "What the hell are you talking about? I am not playing hero here. I'm playing husband to a wife who belongs to me." We were held in that prison cell for another 4 hours, driving me insane with thoughts of my own, before we were released to the upstairs deck. Upon facing the wind that blew across us, I caught sight of Quintessa sitting at a table, dressed in a very provocative black gown, and X sitting beside her. And that was when I noticed that she had chains around her tiny wrists. The look she had on her face was a mixed emotion of fear and worry. "Gentlemen," X said as he scooted his chair closer to her, "I take it you know who this beautiful damsel is?" "If those chains leave a mark on her, I will kill you," I said. X laughed. "I can't wait for it, Prince Gunnar. But you are here as witnesses to our wedding." My heart dropped at his words as he smiled and stood up, yanking her up as she let out a painful cry. "Let her go," I cried. "Why? So your heart can be freed of pain?" "Never, Prince. You are going to watch me marry her, watch me ravage her, and then finally watch me bury her alive." I saw the fear in her eyes as she stared at me. I blinked back the tears. I wasn't sure if this was part of the plan or not, but my heart was racing at what he said. "X, whatever you want from me, take it, but leave her alone." "Prince Gunnar," she said suddenly, "the truth is, I can't marry you." I almost swallowed my tongue. "What?" "London told me everything about your relationship together. I don't want any woman's leftovers." Anger filled me. "Are you mad? I have never had anything other than a few months of courting her. She's fogged your mind with her lies, my lady. Do not believe her." She smiled and gave me a tearful glance. "I was so stupid to have loved you so dearly, only to realize I would never measure up to London. Take a look at her, and then take a look at me." "I am looking at you," I said, "and you're all I want." "It's a little late for that," Quintessa whispered. "I already agreed to wed him." "A man who has you chained?" I asked. My head was swimming, and I couldn't tell if she was acting or if she was really saying this. She remained quiet as X stepped forward and crossed his arms. "The lady has spoken, Prince Gunnar. I think the wedding back home will have a different groom, but I'm sure the king and queen won't mind, will they?" Quintessa. I watched my husband's face turn pale as X stood talking to him, and inside my heart sank. I remembered Reese's words to me before we left the palace hall. He had said to hurt the prince as much as possible, so he would never know what hit him once things started rolling in the right direction. Gunnar turned to look at me suddenly, and our eyes caught as I tried to control my emotion. "You want him?" he asked me. "Yes," I replied with a steady voice. "I'm not built for the royal life. Never was. You and I are strangers who were forced to come together. Let us not make the other one miserable." X laughed and turned around to grab my arm, pulling me toward him, and then he leaned over and kissed my lips hard. It caught me by surprise, but I relaxed my body against his, and I could hear Gunnar hissing out anger and jealousy. When X pulled away, he kept a hand on my arm. "Your wife sure tastes good, Prince Gunnar. No wonder you were ready to walk down the aisle with her. But I tell you what, I would do that for you. Now, what to do with you three?" "Shove them into the sea where the sharks will have them," I said. X laughed as he turned to him. "You are quite vicious, wife. I like it." He pulled out a dagger and walked to them where he cut the ropes tying their hands together, and when he got to Reese, his dagger fell from his hand and he began to stumble. He reached to pick it up, but his vision had begun to fail him and he couldn't see. That was when Gunnar reached for it and picked it up, holding it in front of him. "What?" X said with heavy breathing. "What is this?" And then he turned around toward me and glared at me. "What did you do to me?" "She did nothing to you," Gunnar replied as he threw a punch, and it sent X scattering to the corner. But to my surprise, X came at Gunnar with a roar and the two collided together. The sound of their bodies receiving punches and kicks made me cringe as I tried to figure out who was getting the worst out of it. Dalton jumped forward and threw an elbow at X, who was sent to the floor. Gunnar reached for a sword on the ground and cut the chain holding me down in half. Right before I was able to run to him, someone pulled my hair back, and I turned around to find London yanking me to her. X was on the ground, bloodied and bruised as he laughed. London placed a dagger to my throat, and X kicked Gunnar to his knees. "You didn't think it would be this easy, did you?" London asked. "London," X said with a shaking voice. "Be careful." "No worries. I can handle this," London said. But before X could utter out more words, I turned and slammed my lips against London, who dropped the dagger. I kicked it toward Gunnar, who picked it up, and London pushed me away as she began coughing, and it sent her down to her knees. "What did you do to me?" she asked, fighting to breathe. I could tell that due to her smaller size, the sedative was more effective faster than on X. She looked up at me with inquisitive eyes as X dropped to his knees, his eyes rolling in the back of his head. What, what did you do?" London asked. I knelt down before her, and I replied, "I'm taking my husband home." I watched Gunnar hand over X and London to the Royal Army, and as he turned around toward me, I felt the sudden urge to run to him. I did, and he caught me in his arms just as I tripped. I landed harder than expected, but he saved me from making a fool of myself. "You miss me that much?" he asked. "And you don't seem to miss me at all." "Lies," he whispered. "If I were to show you how much I missed you, you would be bright red." I looked up at him, and a smile was planted on his face. I playfully slapped his shoulder, and then his eyes turned serious as he took my hands. "There's a lot of things we need to talk about," he said. "I am afraid there is still so much to discuss between us." My heart dropped. "If you tell me I did all that for you to send me back home, I will murder you." He laughed. "No, never, darling. But—" He paused, and then he turned to Reese. "Old man, I leave the floor to you." I watched as Reese came toward me and smiled, making my heart feel warm, and he suddenly reached out and took my hands. "What is it?" He looked at the sun, and then he whispered, "Annie loved the sun setting in the sky." I smiled, touched. "She did." Then I stopped, and I shot my head up. "Wait, how did you know my mother's name?" He turned to me and gave me the saddest smile I had ever seen. "You know, I held you in my arms when you were only 5 days old. Annie told me that you came out all pink with a head of hair, crying so loud all she could think of was me." My heart dropped, and I pulled my hands away from him. "What are you talking about? How do you know so much about my mother?" He looked away and then back at me. "She was the love of my life, and you are the creation of us." I gasped and fell to my knees. He dropped down and took my shoulder. "One day," I said to myself, "one day I would look into my daughter's eyes and tell her how much I loved her. Even if I couldn't have her in my life, I would find some way to protect her." I sobbed and looked away. I always asked myself what I did wrong to make my father give me away without a single thought. And now I know why. He was never really my father, was he? No. He was just a man who owned a fancy title that got to be the husband I so desired. But I made sure he owed the money to the right bank, so I could have you within arm's reach. I covered my face with my hands, and he pulled me to hug. Why am I just learning about a father's love now? Where were you when I was alone and forgotten? I was never far, darling girl. I was never far. My lifelong goal has been to get you to be where I can keep you safe. I loved your mother with all of my heart, and to see you grow up to look just like her, it hurts me even more to just look at you. I pulled away and reached out a hand to touch his face. The wrinkled skin before me showed me a man who had lived a hard life. He helped me to stand up. I don't know how to feel about this. I was raised by a man who showed little love to me and gave more to his gambling life. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, he whispered. Just allow me in your life. I was there that night when your mother died. I was outside the window watching and hoping that she would not leave you. But she did. And my darling girl, it tore my heart apart seeing how that man treated you. Did he know that I wasn't his? Nodding, Reese said, yes, he did. How could he not? He hadn't even begged your mother, and she already showed signs of morning sickness just days after the wedding. I shut my eyes, and then I felt strong arms around me. I turned to find Gunnar standing behind me. I shoved at my cheeks and cleared my throat. I suppose you want me to say that it's okay and that I forgive you. No, I don't. However, I want you to give me a chance. Darling, it's not his fault he couldn't raise you. Reese has been with me since I was born, and the man has been nothing but kind, if anything too kind, and I trust him in every way. You know that if I trust someone, then you have no reason not to. What if he leaves me again? I asked. Then I'll find him and I'll bring him back on his knees. No one hurts the woman I love, Gunnar said. I paused, and so did everyone as I assessed what he had just said. I turned around to him and saw the love glittering in his eyes. You love me? I watched as Reese smiled and then left with Dalton as Gunnar turned me around to face him. Since when did you love me? He smiled and then laughter bubbled out. Since you raced to save me, princess. He took my hands and pulled me toward him. His eyes were shining with an emotion that tugged at my heart. Don't ever do that again, my lady. Do not play the hero and march into a situation where you could be hurt. I almost murdered my own brother when I heard you were here on this very ship. Smiling, I replied, and did you not march onto this ship when you heard I was here too? The same you say applies to you as well, my lord. And then I paused and took a deep breath. I am letting everything sink in, my lord. I now understand why I was never loved or cherished by my father. But I believe that fate has a big part in everything that has happened. In just 2 days is our wedding, and the man who raised me will be there along with Reese. I would need to close that chapter once and for all. I'll be there to shield you, should you need me. Gunnar. Weddings are usually something I always avoid attending, but when it's your own, you are never late. I hadn't even seen what Quintessa looked like, and I was a nervous wreck. My hands were all tingles and I was all thumbs, unable to fix my own tie. Reese had to do it for me, and all the while he was giving me looks I couldn't figure out. Finally, after the 4th time he let out a heavy breath, I took the courage to ask, Reese, old man, what is going through that mind of yours? She's my daughter, my lord. If you hurt her, I laughed. Are you playing father right now? His eyes darkened, and I stopped laughing. I apologize, Reese. I meant no disrespect. Give me a chance here to prove that I am the man who will love her. I know the kind of life you have led, my lord. I wasn't proud of it, but I have noticed that since she came into your life, you have changed for the better. Continue this way, and I just might believe you. Thanks for the vote of confidence. We walked out the door together and down the stairs where the hundreds of white carnations were littered on the floor. Long, flowing white sheets hung in the main hall, and a large golden arch filled the hallway where my parents were seated, wearing their wedding attire from when they married many moons ago. They still looked the happy couple I always knew them to be, and Dalton was standing beside them. I reached where they were situated, and my brother stepped forward to touch my shoulder. Are you ready to be a husband? He asked with a grin. Ready as I ever will be. Good, because here comes your wife. I turned when he said that, and my heart dropped. I almost stumbled forward as she walked in with her father holding her arm. She wore a flowing white gown with hundreds of gems on the outside that sparkled, and her hair was put up in a stylish bun with flowers around it. As they neared the arch, she stopped walking, and to my surprise, she let go of her father's hand and walked to where Reese was standing in the back. I held my breath as she went to hug him, and then came back to hold her father's hand. I saw old Reese wiping his eyes as I made it to where I was standing. I reached out a hand and she happily took it. Once I had her in my arms, I took a deep breath and prepared to say everything from my heart. I had this great speech planned, I started, and then you walked in and I forgot everything. And you replaced every single word with your smile and beautiful face. Her eyes filled with tears as I reached out to touch her cheek gently. I know a lot of women, some of them quite more intimate than others, but none of them know me, and it was lonely chasing a shadow that only fulfilled a desire that disappeared when the sun rose. It never kept me warm, and it never gifted me life. And then I met you, and everything that was missing came together in a crash course I wasn't prepared for. We hardly know each other, and yet I feel as if this is the most visible I have ever been in my life. I can't promise that you will never be angry with me, but what I can promise is that you will never feel lonely, because lonely is never going to be you when you have me by your side. She sobbed, and a tear dropped. I caught it and wiped it away as she cleared her throat. You seem to have a way to make me gush like a small child, and I promised myself I wouldn't cry today, and yet here I am, weeping. But a good weeping it is, because I am standing here and glancing at the one man who has taken my heart without warning and kept it protected. You are right. I will be angry at you, but I will never leave you despite being angry. I will always be here to fight with you, to win with you, and to create memories of us. I don't know when I gave you my heart, but it's now yours, and I know you will shield it as you shield your own. I felt a tug in my gut as I let out the breath I was holding, and I reached for her, grabbing her and kissing her. The audience applauded, and I felt her shaking in my arms. When I pulled away, she smiled at me, and my parents came forward, my mother taking her hand, and my father taking mine. My dearest girl, being the wife in the imperial family is not an easy task. You will endure many situations as you go about your daily life. But what I want you to know is that as long as you and Gunnar trust each other, believe and give hope in one another, your marriage will be a happy and strong one. As a husband, you, Gunnar, must protect your wife. And as a wife, Quintessa, you must believe your husband, my mother said. A man who has the heart of a king will love one woman, and one woman for the better of his life, my father said as he patted my shoulder. If he can win her heart and gain the trust of a woman, he is the king the people seek to rule the kingdom with a fair and righteous hand. We both bowed to them as they took a bushel of flowers, dipped it into holy water, and let it rain on us as happy blessing to our marriage. And then we turned around to face the people, and I took her hand as we walked down the steps and toward the garden. When we arrived, her father was standing in the corner of the garden, and she led me to where he stood. And when he turned around and noticed us, his eyes became shining with tears. You look absolutely stunning, Lord Felix said. Thank you. I need to speak to you regarding a very personal matter. I know what it is, he said. When you approached Reese, I knew right away that you were aware. I tightened my hand on hers. Should I leave? No, she whispered. Please stay. She turned back to her father. I want you to know that I don't hate the way you raised me. I am quite thankful for everything you have done for me. But quite frankly, if you did not love me entirely, why was I not sent to Reese? Lord Felix smiled and shrugged. I wanted that, but your mother couldn't bear to leave you. And oddly enough, after she birthed you, she had no more children. It must have been my punishment for not loving you enough. I gave you the best I could, child. But every time I looked into your eyes, I saw that you weren't mine. I tried. I really did. You didn't try hard enough, Reese said as he entered the garden. But I hold no grudges against you, Lord Felix. Now that my daughter has found me, I shall take over from here. Lord Felix let out a sad grin. You were always the one she chose, no matter how poor you were. She saw something in you that she didn't see in me. I raised Quintessa the best I could, and although I did love her, perhaps I didn't love her enough. It was the enough part that broke me, Father, Quintessa said gently, but I forgive you, and if you continue to seek me as a daughter, I shall open my arms to welcome you. But if you feel your duty is done with, I hold no barriers against you. Lord Felix nodded, and then he walked to her, taking her hands. My time with you has ended, darling girl. I leave you in the hands of the man whose blood runs in your veins. No matter if you believed me or not, I did love you, even if it wasn't enough for you. And then he walked to Reese and extended a hand. When Reese reached out to take it, they shook, and he went his way silently. I watched as my wife looked away, and I embraced her, pulling her into my arms. I'm all right, she whispered. Darling girl, you will never be lonely, Reese said as he came to her and gave her a hug. I am here, and I will do my best to give you all my love. She smiled and touched his face. I believe that. And then he winked at me and left as I took her hands into mine and lifted her chin to look up at me. The swirling emotions that ran in them told me she was fighting a battle, but she was letting me inside. Let me burden this with you, wife. She smiled. Oh, you won't get away with anything, husband. Good, because lonely is never you. Thank you so much for enjoying this story, Lonely is Never You. I hope that you absolutely loved Gunnar and Quintessa. I will see you in the next episode.
The wind is playing with your hair. I'm watching it painting circles in the air. You're smiling at me like only you could do. Like a perfect dream, and that dream is you. The sun is lighting up your face. We stayed up all night and listened to the rain. Like music kept on playing like a drum. With you in my arms, I'm the lucky one. And I wanna spend the day making love 1,000 ways and more to show. Baby, every time we're kissing, I know it is forbidden, but I can't stop. No, I can't stop. Your body's on my body, I know you really got me, 'cause I can't stop. No, I can't stop. Even if I'm trying, I could never pull away. And when we are here with me. Though I've done my best, I've tried to prove them wrong. They ain't listening, but I know that she's the one. And I wanna spend the day, make love 1,000 ways and more to show. Baby, every time we're kissing, I know it is forbidden, but I can't stop. No, I can't stop. Your body's on my body, I know you really got me, 'cause I can't stop. No, I can't stop. Even if I'm trying, I could never pull away. And when we are stayed up all night and listened to into the rain, like music it kept on playing like a drum. I'm the lucky one.